Hello, fellow leak detectives. This is Max Ward. I'm the Customer Success Associate for Gutermann, and on this first tutorial video, I'm going to show you all in brief how to narrow down your search window on ZoneScanNet. Basically, how to increase your certainty of where you'll be searching for your leak using the tools that ZoneScanNet has available. So this first scenario is about how to deal with multiple correlations all pointing to one leak. In this situation here, there are three different correlations. And before we go ahead and assume that there are three different leaks going on in this area, there are a few steps that you should always go through to make sure that your multiple correlations aren't in fact one leak. Now, to briefly explain why you might get multiple correlations all pointing to one leak, it's important to understand that a correlation takes place between two and only two loggers that are in your deployment area. So that means if you put, say, 6 loggers out in an area and they all hear the same leak, you could theoretically get about 15 different correlations. Now, in this case, there are 3 loggers, and so we're getting a correlation between 3 different pairs, 1, 2, and 3. These correlations are actually, if we look at the satellite view, they're very close together. And so for many of you, this is going to be a satisfactory deployment. However, I'm going to show you that if given the correct data, ZoneScan's technology is accurate to within 1 to 5 feet. It's also important to mention at the top of this video that these tutorials are designed to get you to think of ZoneScan.net just like any other tool in your toolbox. The results that you see are only as accurate as the data, so it just takes a little expertise and sometimes a bit of detective work. So when I encounter a situation like this, I simply go through a 3-step process for each logger involved. Number 1, I ask where is the logger in real life versus where does ZoneScan's GPS place it. Number 2, I move the logger to its actual location on the map. And number 3, I use that location to assign or attach the logger to the closest pipe node. And if necessary, I create a new pipe node. Now, to go through these 3 steps effectively, there are 4 key features of ZoneScanNet you need to be familiar with. Number 1 is ZoneScan.net Street View. Number 2 is drag and drop mode for map items. Number 3 is adding nodes to a length of pipe. And 4 is assigning loggers to pipe nodes. The second disclaimer is that this customer has GIS data already uploaded onto their ZoneScan.net account. GIS data has a number of advantages. First, pipe nodes, which the loggers attach to, are automatically on your GIS data. And second, your GIS data also includes your pipe type and diameter, which ZoneScan.net uses when it does its calculations. If you do not have GIS data, you can contact us and we will give you instructions for how to send that to us. Or you can use the Draw Pipe Wizard, which I will cover in another video. So let's get started. First thing you'll notice here is that this logger has a red line stemming from it. This red line leads to the pipe node that the logger automatically attached to when the data was uploaded from your ZoneScan Smart app on your tablet to the Gutermann cloud. But before we assign the logger to the proper pipe node, let's use our Street View man down at the bottom right and go ahead and take a look at the intersection itself. So in Street View, you can rotate the camera by clicking and dragging. Or you can move down the street by clicking at a distant location. ZoneScan.net is integrated with Google Street View, so if you are familiar with that, then it's the same process here. So now that I've got all of my correlations and the logger in view, I can go ahead and cross-reference where the logger is on this Street View with where it actually is in real life. Now, because I took good notes, presumably when I did this deployment, I know that the logger is actually underneath this valve lid here. So now we're going to do that number 2 feature of ZoneScan and use drag and drop mode. To toggle that mode on, let's go to the top left-hand corner. We'll find the icon with the globe and pencil. We'll click to toggle that on, and we will click and drag on our logger and drag it over to the valve. Now the location might not be exact, but that's okay. So let's go to the top left-hand corner, click on this back arrow. Now let's try to assign this logger to a closer pipe node. I'm going to right-click on it, go down to Assign Pipe Node on this pop-up window, and I'm going to look for a red marker near the logger. In this case, there is no pipe node near the logger, so we're going to go ahead and add a new pipe node. So let's right-click on this stretch of pipe here, select Edit Pipe, and now you'll notice that there is a white dot at the top of this pipe. That is what we call a pipe node. These pipe nodes can be moved around by clicking and dragging, and we can add a new pipe node by locating the center of this pipe where there is a transparent circle, clicking on that transparent circle, and dragging it up to where we want the new pipe node to be. So now that that pipe node is created, we can assign that logger to it. Let's right-click on that logger, go down to Assign to Pipe Node, and click on the red marker where that pipe node is. As you can see, doing this changed the calculations and updated the correlations, but it still didn't close the gap as much as we thought it would. So let's go down to the southernmost logger and repeat the process. Let's go to Street View, locate the logger, locate the valve, toggle drag and drop mode, drag the logger over to the valve, and hit the back arrow to go back to map view. Since we already know there's no pipe node here, let's go ahead and right-click on this pipe, select Edit Pipe, locate the transparent node, and create it just next to that logger. Now that there's a new pipe node, we will right-click on the logger, click Assign to Pipe Node, and click on that red marker. So I've already done the same process for the northernmost logger, and now that I have all the locations of the loggers correct on ZoneScanNet, you can see that those correlations that were once spaced out are now much closer together. So the exception here is this red arrow, or what we call single-headed arrow or out-of-bracket correlation. A single-headed arrow correlation indicates that the correlation is either very close to one of the loggers or that it is beyond the boundary of the two loggers that are involved in the correlation. In this case, the single-headed arrow is indicating that the correlation is very close to this red logger, which is what we'd expect from a logger that is hearing that amount of leak noise. But let's go into the correlation tab and find out where ZoneScan estimates that correlation is. Let's double click on the single-headed arrow correlation. This brings up our correlation graph. The bottom axis here is the distance. These black lines here are where the loggers are. And this blue peak here is the correlation, or where the leak is. Now, if we hover over the peak of the leak, we'll see that we have an X value of -7. That means that the correlation is roughly 7 feet to the north of this red logger. Since the leak is very close to one of the loggers, ZoneScanNet's calculations are going to have some room for error. It's always best to try to get that suspected leak into the center of your two loggers. So I hope you found this short tutorial helpful, informative. Hopefully you learned something new. As always, feel free to reach out to us via the emails and the phone numbers in the description of the video. And until next time, happy hunting.